So what would happen if one branch of government, or actually just one single person, had absolutely all the power? Just imagine it. An entity that writes the laws, enforces those same laws, and then punishes you for breaking them, all without anybody there to say, whoa, stop. I mean, it sounds like the setup for some dystopian sci-fi novel, doesn't it? But historically, that was just the norm. So today we're going to look at the ultimate mechanism that was designed specifically to prevent that exact nightmare from becoming reality.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're breaking down the U.S. Constitution, a complete student guide. Now, I know it's incredibly easy to just look at the Constitution as this dusty historical relic, some piece of parchment locked behind thick glass. But it is so much more than that. It's actually the active, dynamic rulebook for how the United States government works, literally every single day. Think of it as the core operating system of a massive country. And it answers three absolutely vital questions. Who actually has the power? How is that power used? And maybe most importantly, how is that power limited?
Okay, so let's dive into this master guide. We've broken it down into 5 parts. 1. The failed first attempt. 2. Building the 3 branches. 3. The power control system. 4. Updating the rulebook. And 5. Why it matters today.
All right, Section 1. The failed first attempt.
To really understand why our current rulebook was written, we actually have to look at the disastrous beta test that came first. Right after the Revolution, the founders knew exactly what they did not want, which was the British parliamentary system. In that system, power was heavily centralized in Parliament, and the Prime Minister came directly from the legislature itself. There was basically no strict separation of powers, and obviously, the whole thing was tied to a monarchy. The Americans had literally just fought a brutal war against King George III and that exact kind of centralized authority. They were terrified of a lack of representation, so they completely flipped the script. They went for a new American solution that was based entirely on a very strict separation of powers.
But here's the thing. They didn't exactly nail it on the first try. Back in 1781, they rolled out their first system, the Articles of Confederation. The big problem? It was way too weak. The national government couldn't even tax, and they didn't have a strong national army. The states were basically acting like completely separate little countries. And this weakness really came to a head with events like Shays' Rebellion, where a mob of angry farmers essentially proved that the national government couldn't even maintain basic, everyday order. The operating system was completely crashing. So, in 1787, leaders got together at the Constitutional Convention to write a totally new constitution. That took effect in 1789, creating a national government that was much stronger, but still strictly limited.
Moving on to Section 2, building the 3 branches.
So if the Constitution is an operating system, this right here is the foundational hardware, engineered by leaders like Washington and Madison. And the absolute magic number here is 3. The U.S. government doesn't just have 3 different rooms or chambers, it is fundamentally split into 3 totally distinct branches. This is the absolute core of the separation of powers principle. Let's actually break down exactly what these 3 branches do.
First up, we have the legislative branch, which you probably know better as Congress. This is the lawmaking branch. Now, within this branch, there are 2 separate parts. You've got the House of Representatives, which is based entirely on a state's population. That's 435 members serving rapid 2-year terms. And then you have the Senate, which gives totally equal representation. Exactly 2 senators per state, making 100 members total, and they serve longer 6-year terms. Congress holds some massive authority here. They're the ones who actually make the laws, they declare war, they control the money, meaning taxing and spending, and they hold the ultimate power to impeach officials.
Next is the executive branch, led of course by the President of the United States. So if Congress makes the laws, the executive branch's main gig is to actually enforce those laws. The President is also the commander of the military, holds the power to either sign or veto the laws that Congress passes, and gets to appoint judges and other really key government officials.
And finally, we have the judicial branch, led by the Supreme Court. Now, their job isn't to make the laws or to enforce them. Their job is to interpret them. They are literally the final word on what the laws actually mean out there in the real world.
And this brings us to one of the most brilliant and powerful concepts in the whole American government, judicial review. This originated from a famous landmark case called Marbury versus Madison. Judicial review is essentially the power of the courts to determine if a law is constitutional. If a law violates the base rules set in the Constitution, the judicial branch has the full authority to just strike it down completely. It's basically a giant undo button for unconstitutional rules.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the power control system.
Okay, so we have our 3 branches, right? But how do we actually stop one from just going rogue and taking over the other 2? Well, we need a firewall.
These branches are intricately woven together through a system of checks and balances. It is just perfectly designed so no single branch can become too powerful. Let's say Congress passes a law. Well, the president can check them right there by vetoing it. But wait, Congress can check the president right back by overriding that veto, or even impeaching the president. And sitting right over there on the side, the courts can check both of them by declaring those laws unconstitutional. It's just a brilliant perpetual balancing act.
All right, Section 4, updating the rulebook.
So, the founders actually knew society would evolve over time, so they brilliantly built a software update mechanism right into the system. But where does the authority to even change the rules come from? Well, it comes from a concept called popular sovereignty. Right there in the preamble, the introduction to the Constitution, it starts with three really famous words, "We the people." And what that means is that all government power, all authority, and all the updates to the system come directly from the citizens. The people actually hold the power.
The very first major update to the Constitution dropped almost immediately, back in 1791. We know this today as the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. Think of these as the ultimate shield against government overreach. They guarantee your speech, your religion, and your press, your right to bear arms. They make sure the military can't just take over your home. They protect you from unreasonable searches, and they guarantee a fair jury trial. They also explicitly outlaw cruel punishment, protect unlisted rights, and reserve any remaining powers directly for the states.
And over time, this update feature fundamentally reshaped American society, constantly bending the arc toward justice. Out of the 27 total amendments we have today, the later ones largely focused on expanding rights and equality. The 13th Amendment ended slavery. The 14th guaranteed equal protection under the law. The 15th expanded voting rights regardless of race. The 19th finally granted women the right to vote. And the 26th lowered the voting age to 18. You see, the system was specifically designed to bend and expand, so we wouldn't have to tear down the whole government and just start from scratch.
And finally, Section 5, why it matters today.
Now, it's so easy to look back at the 1700s and think, oh, this is all just ancient history. But if you really want to understand modern American government, you just need to remember these four key concepts. The Constitution is a rulebook that defines the laws, it's a blueprint that gives us the actual structure of the three branches, it's a shield through the Bill of Rights that protects your personal freedoms, and it's a balancing system of checks and balances that makes sure nobody ever gets too much power. It's literally used every single day by judges, lawmakers, and everyday citizens to resolve conflicts and protect our rights.
So here we are. The U.S. Constitution has survived for over 230 years. It evolved from a total system crash on the first attempt into this incredibly flexible framework that guided a brand new nation from the 18th century all the way into the digital age. But as society rushes even deeper into the unknown, the ultimate question remains. How exactly will a 230-year-old operating system adapt to resolve the unprecedented conflicts of tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it helped you decode the ultimate rulebook